All right.
Okay.
Got it.
We have a tiny intro, Steve,
All right.
and then I'll throw it to you.
Nice.
All set, boys and girls?
All set.
Hello, and welcome to the Old and In the Way comedy podcast with Bob and Mark, where we fight ageism one bad joke at a time. Reluctantly, we had to learn the hard way that repression and denial oftentimes are not enough to hold back the tides of reality before we get our tickets punched. So our mission is clear and compelling. We will pull the veil back and reveal many of the absurd and real aspects of growing old. Political correctness be damned, and no malarkey, except for there might be a little malarkey. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to my co-host, Bob Heyman, and our featured guest today, Steve Anderson, professional stand-up comedian, professional skateboarder, surfer, teacher, author. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Anderson.
Comedy. I thought I would try a Mark Norman opening. Good to meet you guys, or good to see you again, Mark. Good to meet you, Bob Heyman.
Nice to meet you, Steve.
I hope
You're kind of teched out, Steve. It almost looks like you know what you're doing.
well. I'm giving the illusion that I'm on Mark Mark Maron's pod. Like I'm doing the sit down in the garage. I even brought in this mic to give the illusion that I was speaking into it, that it was even hooked up. It's not, but it's very professional.
Always a great prop if you know how to use it.
I like your backdrop. I like those waves back there.
Yeah, also, I was telling Bob about your time at the Comedy Store and Mitzi Shore asking you to be the doorman, but you were doing shows.
Yeah, I was on the road and I was not really a Comedy Store guy. Comedy Store was kind of dark in those days. I'm talking about, let's see, 1990. And I was in at the Laugh Factory and at the Improv. I was more of a observational guy, pretty clean. And Comedy Store is really these characters. And it had that dark Sam Kinison vibe in those days. And she, you know, I I realize now it was a great honor that she asked me to work the door, but I was like I was just doing the Comedy Store to do it because I was really in at those other clubs, and there was kind of a non-compete policy with the store that you couldn't do the Improv in those days. But of course, if you were big enough, you could do everything. But I was just breaking in LA. Yeah, I was getting spots at the Laugh Factory, which was cool, and got passed by Bud at the Improv. Did evening at the Improv later. So yeah, but the store was cool. I mean, I just like getting on stages everywhere.
I was telling Bob I thought it was in case somebody didn't show, Mitzi had a guy at the door.
There's always that guy. There's always that guy waiting to go on. But
Absolutely.
yeah, I had a couple good years in LA. Let's see. I want to see let's see, 89, 90. And then I headed back to Florida. Oh, I did 2 years of the San Francisco comedy competition, which was really good training, good pressure. Then went back to Florida and got a couple MTVs, and then came back to do came back to do an evening at the Improv. The guy from WKRP was my host, Frank Bonner. He played Herb Tarlick on WKRP.
Oh yeah,
And,
yeah, yeah.
I remember who was that guy? The guy who booked it, his name is escaping me right now. The guy who got me in there was an improv booker. And right as they were announcing me, his head stuck through the curtain where I was waiting and goes, "Don't bomb." And I go, "Okay, all right, I'll try not to." And I go out there. It was weird. I mean, the whole room was lit up. It it was a little disconcerting. Bud was there because Herb Tarlick was there. So were Gordon Jump and Tawny Katane. And yeah, I had a pretty good set. I've tried to bust in this new line and that got nothing. But I was able to recover from it and had the awkward moment with Bud because I used to hold a coffee mug in those days. And when you walk by Bud, you're supposed to do the fatherly hug with Bud with a monocle there, but I had that coffee mug, so it was this kind of weird thing, like okay, and like, I like disappeared. But afterward, Tawny Katane came up to me and she goes, I mean, there she is, Tawny Katane in all her glory, white snake glory. And she came up to me and goes, "You were wonderful," and just looked at me with adoring eyes. And I was like, "Yeah, you're wonderful too." Or I was thinking that I didn't say it, but yeah, that was quite a moment. And you know, rest in peace, Tawny, man. She was, and at that time, I later found out she loved comics, that she was dating Seinfeld, and that's just another one of those great moments in comedy I had that I you know, it was, I mean, I guess they call it altitude sickness in mountain climbing, where somebody gets too high from the oxygen, lack of oxygen. They just wander off the side of the mountain. And maybe that's what happened to me in comedy. I don't know. I mean, I used to have this line about a girlfriend making me strong, strong enough to leave her. And I think comedy kind of gave me this feeling like I could do anything. I mean, skateboarding was a lot like that too. But comedy kind of gave me this feeling like, shoot, I want to be a writer. I just want to be an author. Because I'd be sitting in these hotel rooms reading like the greats, you know, Hemingway, Cormac, uh, Steinbeck, everybody. And I was an English major at UF. I studied with Harry Crews, also studied with Barry Hannett at University of Mississippi. But I left comedy to be a writer. And I thought that that was going to be kind of Siamese twinned with academia. Like I was just going to disappear into grad school, come out with a wife and a book like Jay McInerney or something, and then just the rest would be history. But it turned out I was history. Boy meets world, and so that ended up with lost years. Let's see, lost. You know, I'd go back and forth into comedy, um, and I couldn't really put together. So hard to put together a living in comedy, you know, because you had to have.
Steve, can I throw you a curve?
Sure.
Last time we talked on the phone, you mentioned that you opened for Ellen.
Yeah, Ellen and I were friends in LA. We worked a couple times together. Let's see, the first time we worked together was at the Irvine Improv, and she had just come out of her first television show. She hadn't been on stage in 2 years. Um, I was doing about, I think about 20 or 25 up front. And the first thing she ever said to me was, "We got to get Johnny to see you." And that's another one of those moments I can't forget. Just talking about Carson, of course. And one of those moments I can't forget. It makes me think about, you know, going back in the biz. I don't know if guys our age get back in the biz. I'm 62, but I feel like
You're doing it now.
I don't feel like I've lost a step because I was getting laughs in Asia as a teacher. And it was basically public speaking and doing like 8 hours of improv every day. And I was getting good laughs. And sometimes I realized that I have no home. My only home is in the laughter of others. That's the only time I feel good. And I just realized, I mean, I could walk into a room of 25 kindergartners who didn't speak English. And within 5 seconds, they were laughing hard. They didn't even speak English. And I could just make them laugh with my presence. I guess it's a superpower. but But yeah, it makes me Ellen and I were friends. We worked at the let's see, we worked at the Comedy Corner um in West Palm. We hung out in LA. She was funny, dude. I mean, she was one of my hands down, one of my favorite comics of all comics, male, female. I loved her. And I think we connected so hard at the beginning that I think we might have had a love thing going on. And I'm not kidding. We really connected. And we would just start playing these word games and reference games, these games that would just come out of thin air that would just go. And the rules were being made as we would talk. And we both picked up on, she was so freaking brilliant. Um, yeah, I just loved her, and God bless her. I know she ran into some PR trouble um, of late because of her, I guess, like she didn't want people, talking to her on her set or whatever. But that's just a star thing, that just happens. But
You also mentioned you were hanging out with Jerry Seinfeld before his TV show broke.
yeah, totally one of my mentors. Actually, he's the reason I got into comedy was Seinfeld. I mean, I used to watch his Carsons, and I would actually add tags. I would see like he's leaving this laugh too quickly, and I would write tags. And of course, later on, I realized that's the masterfulness of Seinfeld, that he knows when to leave a joke and just to leave him wanting more, make things precise. But yeah, he was playing Max Famous Bar in Daytona, and my friend Ron Bennington was opening. And let's see, my agents Holland and Harris knew that I loved Seinfeld, and so they said, "Hey, the condo's going to be open, so you can stay there and hang out with Seinfeld." So for the whole week, I got to hang out with Seinfeld after the show and just talk shop, talk the biz. He was the first guy who ever said it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I was getting ready to move to LA and wondering if it was too soon. It was like 4.5 years or so. But then we watched the Super Bowl on that Sunday, which was awesome. I mean, we got a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken, my favorite. I mean, what's better than KFC and Seinfeld? And Seinfeld would get up to go into the kitchen to grab some more chicken. And me and Harris were hanging out, and we were pointing to the spot on the bed where Seinfeld was sitting, going, "Jerry Seinfeld is here." And then he would come back out, and then we'd act casual. And I actually made him laugh once. By the way, when he would comment on that football game, he was funny as hell. I mean, he would form Seinfeldian observations on the spot of the play-by-play. He was really, it was just like Seinfeld, you'd think. But I made this joke about a guy with a bad toupee that was on top of his helmet, and got a real laugh out of Seinfeld. I don't know about the timing or the wording, but it made him laugh. So I got that going for me. I got that in my back pocket.
Do you have any shtick in your back pocket,
Are we allowed to curse?
Bob? Are you muted, Bob?
No, go ahead, go.
Bob is back.
What I was going to ask is, since our theme of this podcast is aging, and you made reference to possibly being too old to get back to stand up. I mean, I'm remembering the George Burnses and the Henny Youngmans and everybody who did it until the grave. Do you think times have changed and you have to be young to do comedy?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't. I mean, of course, I mean, I'm a little bit long in the tooth. The classic example is Rodney Dangerfield, hitting at early 50s. But of course, these other guys go strong until their 90s. But you have to remember, they're a star all the way until that time. They already have the name. And so I've been out of the game for about 20 years. But like I said, I've been doing a lot of, stage time in classes. But the idea of starting over again, I'm in Oxford, Mississippi right now. I'm thinking about going back to Florida where I started and maybe move into that Tampa area. There's a lot of stages from like Clearwater to Sarasota, and maybe even some people who still remember me over there. So I might be able to get some stage time. But you know, everybody's destiny is different. You can't ask anybody about what your destiny is because it's individual. Like I could ask other people or look at other people about my level, see where they're at, make some judgments. But I think we all, anything can happen. I mean, I'm not averse to trying to start over and just actually I was thinking about going back there, trying it again, and writing a novel about it. Actually, you know what? I've got a giant novel I wrote in China, which was based on me going back into comedy. And I was going to try to get on Letterman before he left the air. And I wrote a 1,400 page fictional memoir. And it had to do with my stand up life, my skateboarding life, basically my life, and then also my Chinese life and my Asian life, and thinking about going back to America, starting comedy over. The second volume was supposed to be me trying comedy.
Steve,
Here's the biggie. Here's the bad boy right here.
Oh my God.
so those are the missing documents?
Those are all classified.
I refuse to give them back.
Yeah.
And my publisher refuses to look at it because it turns out it's too big. But yeah, the second volume was supposed to be my experience. It was going to go from past to present, and then go into the future. The second novel was supposed to be about getting back into stand up, and then ending with me getting on Letterman. And then the third volume, it's Proustian at this point. The third volume was supposed to be about the aftermath. How did that turn out? What was it? What's it like now to be rich and famous? But that did not happen.
Oh, not yet.
Not yet, but you know, I'm willing to give it another go. I'm here in Oxford. I'm just coming out of the pandemic, and I'm kind of hungry for change. I mean, I've got a lot of pandemic death on me right now, and I'm ready to start life again. I'm not sure if I'm going back to Asia or going back to Florida and do comedy. I mean, I'm really 50-50 at this point because just the logistics of the move. Oh, and
Well, this might be a turning point.
yeah, I've got a lot of paintings I got to sell. Let me show you one of my paintings.
It's
I don't know if you can see that.
I see a lot of blurred words.
Yeah, I'm doing this literary series about iconic novels, iconic pages. That one's Catcher in the Rye. I've got about 30 pages of Catcher in the Rye and Great Gatsby.
Cool.
So, you know, the art world is tough. I mean, it's tough to move stuff around. It's tough to get stuff on walls, and I've kind of faced that, you know, through the pandemic, as well as my screenplay. I wrote a noir parody with a romance called Bullet Easy Bullet Bullet, and I, you know, it's another boy meets world moment of dealing with Hollywood and realizing, oh my God, this is tough. But I still have hope. A good friend of mine's at Sundance right now. Supposedly he's going to try to hand it out a little bit. Oh, by the way, I sent Mark Mark the screenplay. Bob, are you an agent, or what's your?
Oh, I'm a internet marketing guy. I've been a booking agent, but I would not go back to that career for anything. That's the worst job in show business.
What, and get out of showbiz? But
Yeah.
do you have
Well,
any?
I was a booking agent for David Crosby. There could not be a worse job.
Wow, get him to the Vic.
Well, sort of.
Yeah,
Having to freebase every 20 minutes got in the way of doing gigs.
damn. That's too bad. Yeah, rest in peace. I once saw him. I was jogging when I was living in Studio City. I was jogging on Moore Park, and I saw this Benz, this power Benz roll by, and I go, "That looks like David Crosby." And then I looked behind me, and the vanity tag said like Crosby won or something like that on it.
Well,
He was
he eventually cleaned. I mean, when he went to jail in Texas, he actually cleaned up. I had the misfortune of dealing with him when he was at his drug addictive worst.
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah, especially. Yeah, I think Sam was that way too. There's stories of him with like a full oh, another story. The story is of him with like a full theater, and he's on the floor in a stupor, and they're trying to get him up to get to the show. And speaking of that, I hung out with
Sam
Hunter.
Kennison.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
I hung out with Hunter Thompson once, and at University of Florida, where I went, my friend was a powerful law student named Scott Schlesinger, and he knew people at Student Government Productions. And Hunter Thompson was coming in town to give a speech, and he hung out with us drinking scotch for like an hour beyond showtime. I mean, he was supposed to be at this theater. He was hanging out with us, and man, he was funny and cool and quite a raconteur. Um, but um, but yeah, but yeah, Bob, if you have any Hollywood connections, don't be shy about asking Mark for that.
I'll forward you the book, Bob.
Yeah, please. I'm not sure that I do. Uh, well, I wrote this rock opera with Marty Ballin, and his widow is got a fairly high-powered Hollywood lawyer trying to do stuff with uh, you know, his legacy materials, of which my rock opera is one. So that might be the only contact I've got. But send me
Cool.
stuff. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to hear your opinion. Usually, when I send it to somebody, I never hear from them again. So I'm starting to send it to bill collectors.
Never a good sign.
Yeah, yeah, really.
Yeah. No, but I'm serious. People have read it, love it. The thing is, it's a little bit politically incorrect, and it's a hard R in more ways than one. And if this were Quentin Tarantino, people would be falling all over me to
Oh,
produce.
yeah.
But I mean, this is very. I mean, it's funnier than Tarantino, and maybe a little bit deeper. It's a little bit more epic, but yeah, give it. It's a series. It works as a series or a feature, either way. And
What were you doing in Asia?
I was teaching English
Ah,
and writing and painting. I mean, that I wrote that big novel. By the way, that big novel was 5 drafts, and I did a bunch of paintings that I shipped over here, cost a fortune. So I'm trying to get those things on walls and try to get them. I've sold one of these literary paintings for $2,000,
oh,
uh,
wow.
and it's my idea. I mean, I was in Korea and I was reading Catcher in the Rye, and I had this for the fifth time. I had this epiphany when I was reading it that the page was perfect. I go, wow, this is a work of art. And then it was, I think, 3 years later I did my first one, and then I did about 30 of them. So I'm trying to get them up in this town, not having too much luck. But
Wow.
yeah, take a look at that screenplay if you find time. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And speaking
I'll take a look, and I promise I won't ghost you.
of, I think the final page says ghost him.
How are we doing for time, Bob?
We
I
have,
know we're.
we have
What's
about
that?
8 minutes left. No, I'm sorry, 6 minutes left, 6.5.
All right.
Do you want some material?
Yeah,
Yeah, you got material?
yeah.
I just wrote this one. This one's fresh off the books. It's 2023, right? No, I don't know that. It's 2023. We're already a couple weeks into 2023, but I'm still writing "fuck Trump" on all my checks.
Uh,
Is
yeah, you might do that through the whole year.
Is that anything? You can also say it's Year of the Rabbit, Chinese New Year, Year of the Rabbit, but I'm still running fuck Trump on all my checks. Um, I got up today and I brushed my teeth, I brushed my hair, and then spent the better part of the morning trying to get toothpaste out of my hair. Folks,
Ooh,
folks, these are the
but
jokes.
Okay.
Folks, hello.
You know, what you said about possibly being too old, but those other guys had already become famous, it makes me think of one of the wisest things I ever heard about show business. I once got to meet, there was a famous music tip sheet guy named Cal Rudman, and he was I was with Ballin, and it was on the Mike Douglas show, and backstage I'm listening to Mike Douglas interview Cal Rudman, and goes like, "What can you tell me about show business? You've been in it forever." And his answer was, "Well, the truest thing about show business is once a name, always a threat." But basically, if you're not a name, I guess you're no longer a threat.
Yeah. Well, I think that could also be interpreted, if you've got it, you've got it. It doesn't go away. And so you're always a threat. If you could make it once, you can make it
Mhm.
anytime. Although we're in a kind of in a new age of like TikTok and YouTubes and social media. And I'm hearing they're relying a lot on that as far as bookings and stuff these days. But my friend T-Bone Ryan, Tom Ryan up there in New York, has got a plan for me as far as getting on Sirius Radio
Uh-huh.
and then just trying to get a decent 20 minutes and then seeing how it goes. Maybe trying to get on some boats and stuff. I was a pretty clean comic and observational, very influenced by Stephen Wright and Jerry Seinfeld. I was kind of in
Oh,
between.
yeah, I love those guys. Well, maybe you can get on TikTok.
I don't know about that, but I think in a weird way,
yeah, you have the China connection.
Mitch Hedberg started out at Haggerty's in Boca. That's my hometown, and I used to play there often. And I'm pretty sure Hedberg, with his subjective observation, I think I don't want to sound cocky, but I think I influenced him. I think he was watching a lot of my shows, and I think he went up during some of my shows, and was like an open micer. But I would never watch the open micers. I would always hang out in the kitchen before my show and just go on. But yeah, I was very objective, and I tried to put some character into it too. So I used to work pretty clean, and I was writing, even when I was out, even when I was in Asia, I was still writing jokes, and so yeah, I never stopped the music.
Cool.
Good.
We have 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Mark, anything you want to sum up, or Steve, do you want to?
Well, Steve, I hope you take this moment to reconsider stepping back out on the boards again, and
Oh, I second that.
Thank you.
and you have a wonderful background that I think you can only build on.
Yeah, right here in the lower right, Steve Anderson from Boca Beach Club. I was a handsome lad. Up here in the upper left, Frontside Rock and Roll. That was in St. Louis. I actually split my chin open that day. I think it was a Christmas day.
St. Louis had a bowl?
Yeah, it was. I was touring with Jim Goodrich and Brent Rademacher, and they let us into the park. The park was closed. They let us into the park for a photo session, and I was doing these frontside foot plants, and I just started pulling them off, but this one boop bipped me real quick on the bottom. But yeah, good times. Yeah, maybe head back to Florida. We'll see.
Sounds good.
What's that?
Sounds good. Sounds like
Yeah, good talking to you guys. Great hanging out. How about you guys? When's the last time you did a spot?
Ooh,
Late 80s.
yeah. We're very passe.
And then from 2000 to 2002 to 2012, I emceed a film festival up in Marin County, north of the Golden Gate Bridge, which gave me 15 minutes of stand-up in usually a room of anywhere from 400 to 800 people. And I was doing that once a year. And I don't know if you remember Country Joe and the Fish. He was one of our headliners, and we got to share the stage that night.
Yeah, what was he was like a one hitter, right?
Well,
No, Country Joe and the Fish
he
had
had a one hit, but he had a great moment at Woodstock with the FUCK chant.
Ah,
He also ended his career with that because he had a spot on the Ed Sullivan Show, and the second after that concert aired, nobody would touch him.
Right.
He
Okay.
literally ended his career.
Hey, good night, everybody. We're out of here.
Steve, good talking to you.
Thank you, Steve.
good seeing, good talking, good meeting, and yeah, take a look at the bullet, and let's talk soon.
Will do. Thank you.
Comedy.